Hi everybody. If you're like me, when you're teaching people pylon maneuvers like eights on pylons or pylon turns, you'll find your students mostly struggle with visualizing what the maneuver is and visualizing important reference points and lines. Let's take the cub up and try to make visualizing these maneuvers easy. I want you to look out the side of the airplane and imagine the lateral axis of the plane, the fat axis, extending out to infinity from your eyes. Today that'll be a spot a little bit below the wingtip, but this point will look differently from different seats in different planes. So a moment to get the idea of where this spot is from your seat position will make things a little bit easier later on. We'll stretch this point out like this into a line to make things a little bit easier. Stuff forward of our fat line is forward of the airplane's lateral axis. Stuff aft of our fat line is aft of the airplane's lateral axis. So we're going to go fly, and we want to make some coordinated turns, but we want a reference point that we choose to stay on our fat line. So where these fields meet, there's a bush. I'll draw a yellow ring on the bush so it's easier to see in your phone. Let's keep that bush on our fat line. As we roll into the turn, I'll speed things up so you can see how the maneuver plays out. Now let's watch this same thing again in real time. You'll see we've labeled the area ahead of our fat line push. If our pylon moves ahead of the fat line, we'll push on the stick gently and proportionately to the rate at which the pylon is moving forward. The area behind the fat line is labeled pull. If the pylon is moving aft of the fat line, we'll pull on the stick gently and proportionately to the rate at which it's moving. If you're disproportionate with your elevator corrections, it's easy to over-control the maneuver. No big deal, that's why we practice. Periodically scan for traffic, towers, and take note of the highest and lowest speeds and altitudes during the maneuver. As long as you enter somewhere near your pivotal altitude, turns or eights on pylons are a cakewalk. Now let's make some mistakes. We'll hold the nose up just a little bit too long and let our pylon deviate forward of our fat line. All we have to do is ease the nose down until the pylon stops moving away from our fat line, then go just a smidge more to recover it to the line. Similar action if the pylon is aft of the fat line. If you're an instructor teaching these maneuvers, you may calculate upwind and downwind pivotal altitudes that are usually somewhere between 150 and 250 feet apart. At relatively shallow bank angles, you'll see about this difference in pivotal altitude, upwind to downwind. If, however, you work yourself and your student into steeper bank angles, you'll see a greater variations in speed and smaller variations in altitude. Slower indicated speeds occur in the downwind when you've been pulling up. Faster indicated speeds occur in the upwind when you've been pushing down. Greater variation in indicated speed means less variation in ground speed, and that's less variation in pivotal altitude. Once people do get the gist of the maneuver, please steer away from using my terminology. I used to refer to wingtips or the lateral axis of the airplane when I would teach this, and more often than not, I would cause students to stare literally at the wingtip, and it would cause them to struggle to get their references for a little bit. Once the general maneuver is understood, you'll return them to using proper terminology, and also return them to calculating pivotal altitudes, etc. Finally, this maneuver is pretty gentle. A faster execution gives them a few hundred more feet of clearance from unlit towers, wildlife, etc. I rate CFIT and wildlife as a greater hazard than structural risks, however. I don't have much problem with them taking a faster speed to do these. Your opinion may differ, and you're probably right to have that different opinion. Anyway, thanks for watching my video. My name's John. See you later.